So here we have the stocks TM control box for the Fanjet Duo. It's only available on the Fanjet Duo, and the TM stands for twin metering, which explains here for hoppers A and B for the left and right of the Fanjet Duo. There are numerous settings that we need to input before we can use the machine. We try and upload the basic settings from factory, but we'll run through everything in this manual to enable you to spread some product. The settings we have here are 18 and 18 to give you a full 36 meter spread width, and then we have the 12, which is another spread width which we can reduce, so that will be spreading 12 and 12 to give you 24. The Fanjet Duo can only spread 36 meters on front of a tractor or a self-propelled sprayer where the spreaders are mounted high enough. For UTVs, 32 meters is the maximum spread width. So on the screen here we have the forward speed, which comes in from the GPS. We have the live application rate, which varies, which is set, and then the metering units will vary as you speed up and slow down across the field. Now on the side here, the bottom two tabs here relate to turning the discs on, so that would turn the discs on and then they'll be spinning. And then we turn the metering units on through that one, and then when we want to run we have this one on. So for the machine to work, everything should be green. Obviously with this just being a demo, not attached to a machine, you can't use anything, so we will get rid of the alarms. So the basic settings can be done down the side here. We have the different screens, and then the settings are the bottom one. So we go into spanner and screwdriver and then gears, and we're in the settings page. And anything we do to the left we have to do to the right. We have to think of them as two separate applicators rather than making one setup and then forgetting to do the other side. So we call these bin or tank 1 or 2. And then we have the machine settings, which adjusts everything that is common to both, and then on the display side, which you shouldn't need to touch unless there's something wrong, is where we adjust what we see on the front screen. So the setup one, we have a 65 litre hopper and we're using 100% of it. We have a rate of 5 kilos a hectare, and that's where you would set your rate if you wanted to change that, but 5 kilos a hectare is quite standard for slug pellets. And then we have the product at the bottom. We'll go to here first. So for here we can change the product, and now in here you can click the clipboard to edit it. You could put in here a particular brand, so for argument's sake we could just use Slux on here, and then you can have different products saved on there. And then we have the calibrate at the bottom here, which we'll go through in a minute, but this is where we can do the different calibrations. But we must check that the calibration setup we use on the Duo TM is in weight. So on here you have the different counting, time or weight, but we always use the weight function on here, otherwise the calibration won't work. And then for the setup of a machine we must make sure that we've done what we do for one. We check that we're the same on both, so 5 kilos a hectare, product is Slux, and then calibrate here. You see we have 1 pulse per kilo, whereas on the other one we had 10,000. So just to keep them both the same, and this is the number of pulses per kilo of product. That will change when we calibrate it, but we just need to make sure everything's starting from the same place. And then on the machine setup, first of all we can do measurements. So on here, if we want to change the spread width from 36 meters, we unclick spinner width control. That now allows us to change that. If it's not a 36 meter machine, if it's 32 or 24, we can edit that to 32. And then we can put spinner width control back on. Now we can set up spinner width. So on here you can see that this percentage is the percentage of full battery voltage which relates to the spread width. To get these accurately set up, you would have to tray test, but we know we've set the machine up to 32 meters, and if it's on a UTV, we know that 32 meters is the maximum spread width for a UTV. So we'll leave it 100%, set that to 16. We now have 100% to 16. You can have up to 3 different spread widths set on there, depending on whether your machine can do multiple spread widths, or whether you want to do half width, or whether you want to do a boundary setting. You can set up to 3, which you can just plus 1 in here. We could do one at 90% spinner speed, and we could call that spread width 15. Now what that would mean is there's no overlap, so if you were going around near a watercourse or some residential properties and you didn't want any overlap extending past the edge of the field, we now have a third spinner width setting, which on the front screen now you can see we now have 12, 15 and 16. So from the machine setting we can also check our speed source. Check all speed source GPS is enabled, and then from in here check that the GPS is ticked for the use for the speed. But then also, if we want to utilise the automatic settings for automatic on-off, is the implement offset. We select the implement offset, and then down here it's headland controlled enabled no, so we want to change that to yes. And then the coverage overlap percentage is the point that the machine will turn on and off. So if you wanted to achieve full spread width where it was over applying on some of the land to reach a 2 or 3 meter strip you're not applied on, then we need to make sure that this is set to 100%. And that will leave every part of the area of the field with a certain amount of product on it. The offset, front and rear offset, that's where the product lands. So if it's landing in front or behind you, you can choose to set the offset, but then the lead-in laid-out distance is the point of which the machine turns on and off. So if it's front or rear mounted, you might choose to adjust those settings to suit your machine. And then on the CANBus setting, this is where you can check if your pods are turned on. So the pods are the control boxes in the back of each unit. So on here, if your machine is plumbed in, you'll see on configure pods here, you'll see next to pod 1 and 2, you should see 2 different serial numbers for left and right. And then if you're front or rear mounted and you want to swap the way that left or right is, depending on whether it's front or rear mounted, and it's the wrong way around, you literally just click swap pods and it will swap left to right around. It's as simple as that. So to go to calibration, you're into product, you go from product to calibrate, and then where it says start calibrations, we need to make sure that the calibration setup is working on weight. So you go to start calibration. Now on here you will use your calibration hopper mounted to the machine with your metering unit in it. You'll have your calibration bucket hanging underneath, and you must remember to put in a weight. So we're going to weigh 1 kilo. So enter the weight on there that we're looking to achieve. With the amount with the bucket hung underneath, you just press start. The machine will start metering. Your pulses will start increasing and counting up, and then when it's weighed what it thinks is a kilo, it will stop, and then when it stops you will actually enter the weight into the measured amount here. So if it was, you only measured 900 grams as opposed to a kilo, you have to remember to put 0.900, so that would be 900 grams because the weight is in kilos. So the measured amount was 0.9 of a kilo or 900 grams, and then you might repeat the calibration again, and when you get the number of pulses that suits your particular type of slug pellet, you can then save that amount and re-enter that manually if you change between pellets. So with the machine calibrated, with your working width put in, you are now ready to start spreading product. So to turn it on, you'll turn the discs on, you'll turn the metering units on, and now when we are in automatic with headland management, we now have an A that comes up over the hoppers, and you press start, and when you start moving and you get a speed input, when you're in an area that's not been applied, these will go green on and off automatically. So you will drive around the outside of the field to put your boundary on, and then as you cross the boundary, the units will turn on and off automatically. And to watch what's happening, you go to number 4, which is the map, and when you have a GPS, you will have a boom and an arrow to indicate the direction, and you will see the units turning on and off as you move up and down the field. The other screens you have is left disc, right disc, and this shows the amount of product that they're applying. And then number 3 is where you store your total applied and then the amount in, so you can actually physically enter the kilos of product or the application, the total area covered. And then on this screen here, we must remember we have alarms. So when you have all your alarms turned on, it will default set, if an alarm goes off, it will default set to this page and highlight something that's not working, and you can reset from that. And also from the jobs page, you have to have the job you're working on highlighted as coverage. You can have all jobs active, but for the headland management to work, coverage has to be ticked. Now you can have multiple jobs, or you can leave one job running, but I would recommend every month or two that you delete the job, otherwise the machine slows down as it tries to open up all the product at every work job you've done for the last 6 weeks all in one go, and that can just be done just by highlighting the job and then deleting it, and then you can add another job in its place.